Yes, but I'm a player hater wife.
General.
To come back just before the attack by the locusts, back in good time. But I saw them coming, all the way.
You saw that coming?
We saw them coming all the way from across almost the far end of Northeastern. And we're watching them coming all the way. Now they're somewhere in Meru. You should have done something. It's quite surprising.
So the true. Right. Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
General so worried about the locust is actually food.
It's a good food.
Is concerned so far. Looking internationally, the US-Iran tension is also threatening, the global security as it is right now, and we're facing the ramifications of it. You can see also the oil is spiking. Just the recent review as well by the EPR as well has also seen this kerosene and paraffin, kerosene and also diesel and petrol as well spiking. So we're getting, the smarts of what is really happening with the US and Iran tensions. We shall be looking at that much deeper in the course of a program. Here in the country as well, our soldiers, security agencies, they've been affected, and they're saying this is the anniversary of the Al-Shabaab as it is. And we've noted every January beginning, at least, there has to be, a spate of attack, if not really mega, just pockets of them in different parts of the country. I don't know what you can, allude this to, Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Debarl, you're right. January is Al-Shabaab's so-called anniversary. They've been carrying out highly visible attacks on Kenya Defense Forces targets inside Somalia, the police and security agencies, and other softer targets inside Kenya in the months of January, all the way since 2016, I think, 2015, 2016. And we should not be surprised by any kind of attacks or the string of attacks that have been happening actually since December until today.
All right. General.
Yes, that's true, Debarl. And I want to say that this starts normally with the long break over Christmas. The best time when you find people sitting on their laurels, and therefore you become good targets. But for Al-Shabaab, yes, start off the year from about December all the way until now. And one will argue that it is coming. They're preparing. You need to do your own good intelligence and then be able to respond accordingly. And that can be done very well, because if you just invest more, have more intelligence, see what is coming, secure your targets, like your targets, that you anticipate. The only problem now is that they are going for other new targets, which were not expected. Like, for instance, the Simba camp attack was not expected. Therefore, that gives a bit of worry in terms of the way they're going now.
Right, Ambassador.
Well, I don't know what to say about Al-Shabaab because, if you look at what has happened in Lamu when they attacked, it was also on the heels of what had happened in Iran, which means as Kenya, we are now being sucked in and also being seen as part of that axis. Not a very good position to be in. But of course, when you also look at the situation in Somalia itself, one had hoped that by now you would have a civilian government in place. Somalia will take care of its own security arrangements. That's far from being in place.
Right.
So we are going to expect a turmoil within Somalia itself unless really things change fast, and I don't see them changing. And so we'll still continue to have this nagging situation around our
corner. But the problem question has been is were this attack also maybe instigated by what is happening with the US and the Iran tensions as well? Or can we uncouple that with the anniversary? This is just, according to their plan. How do we try and draw that demarcation that this is not remotely connected with what is happening in the US so far? Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
Yeah, first of all, the persistence of Al-Shabaab, of course, demonstrates their resilience, but it also shows their, based on the recent attacks, including the military base, that houses U.S. troops, is that it's an equal opportunity attack. And number one, I think it goes to emphasize the point that Kenya was making in trying to have Al-Shabaab listed as a terrorist organization, in which our allies, the United States, actually were opposed to it. And hopefully they're going to reconsider that, because when we list it as such, it's going to allow a lot of countries to coordinate but also mobilize resources to ensure they actually constrain the activities. Now, number two, It will be a little bit of a stretch, frankly speaking, to associate Tehran with Al-Shabaab, because ideologically they're so different. It's almost like what, when Colin Powell and then, of course, who was admitted, tried to make a stretch between Osama bin Laden and Iraq to justify. Now, in fact, Saddam Hussein is much closer in terms of ideology, actually, to Al-Qaeda than Iran is to Al-Shabaab. And so, of course, there have been arguments that perhaps they're trying to use them as proxies. And right now, there's really no evidence in the move, because remember, this is a jihadist Sunni outfit. And you have this Shia regime. And mostly has focused outside actually supporting Hamas, which internationally is not... it does not have international agenda per se. Its struggle confines itself with Israel.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a stretch, and I really don't think that's something credible. And people, I think, they should stop being lazy.
But we've seen people really coming out in force also during the burial of the general Soleimani, and that particular chasm, so to speak, has been bridged a bit in light of what is really happening, and maybe even the Shia. The Shia and the Shiites, right?
Yeah.
They're uniting on this as well. You don't think that is bringing them together, fighting a common enemy?
Debarl, it's very quick to make a connection like that, and I understand the ambassador's point of view. But my colleague on the left here is absolutely right. And the reason is because the ideological schism between the two different faith groups within Islam is huge. And if you look at Iraq, and if you look at the Taliban, if you look at the relationship between that and Iran, you could see that if you're a terrorist does not necessarily mean, if there's an adage that doesn't work in the Middle East, is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It doesn't work in the Middle East. It's probably the only place where that doesn't work. So it is true that some people may make that connection, and we shouldn't just say that it's not there. But I tend to agree with my colleague on the left here, because the differences and the animosity between these two groups, and not the people. There's a difference between the people who believe in these two different types of madhabs, which means houses within the faith, and the ideological military state systems that want to push a particular agenda, a political economic agenda. So Mr. Soleimani had his reach all the way to what they call the Crescent, which is all the way to Lebanon, all the way to Syria, all the way to Iraq. To Yemen. The players in Somalia here are different. They are the Saudis, the United Arab Emirates, the Qataris. Those are the people who have influence in the Horn of Africa. The Iranians haven't made headway in this area, and I don't think that their type of political involvement is not interested in what's going on here in the Horn of Africa. They're more interested in what's going on in the Middle East, because it's quite a stretch for them. So at the end of the day, I think that it's important that we in Kenya stop being defensive about Al-Shabaab and to be proactive about it. Because if those men could come to Mada Island and just walk into Lamu and start shooting up the barracks, it means that there was an intelligence break somewhere. The break of intelligences needs to be fixed. We're doing a great job. We're doing a great job, but there are breaks.
Right. We'll get to more intensely on it much later in the course of the program. Let's just speak also the headline thoughts of Ambassador. Have we wait on it? Or I've lost? I think it's Professor.
Yes.
Right.
Where I'm coming from is the whole world is destabilized. And so they're opportunists. You see what's going on in South America, the Middle East, and also here in Africa. Sahel, they just kill hundreds of people, murdered, and the French is right in the middle of it. The point is, what I've been saying all along, is Kenya need to be serious about securing its border. And then we need to use again, what I said several times and what Israelis have used very effectively, 3 Ds: detect, deter, and destroy. These are not people who mean well to people. They're destabilizing our education system. They destroy the school system. The question, you cannot figure out what is it they want. And therefore, we cannot hesitate. We cannot take these people to court. They need to be destroyed on instant when you see them. Now, we know that. And we also know the cycle of their violent activities. It happened around this time. Where were they? Where were our security people? These are the kind of things that we need to be very resilient and consistent and very focused about.
All right.
Let me think aloud here. You know, the American approach, particularly on ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the rest, is to go and bomb them and destroy them. And they tried this kind of thing in Vietnam. It didn't work. And so my thinking here is, I think we need to go back and re-engineer or come with different tools, because these tools are not working. And asymmetrical war is not easy to fight by bombing, because there is a lot of damage, collateral damage. So to me, I think it is easier said than done that we can destroy them. I think we need to go back and figure out what has happened. And part of the reason why the West has refused to list Al-Shabaab is because they have been arguing, but you don't see it happening, that you will then make it difficult for us to provide basic services in Somalia, but also to bring them to the table.
Thank you.
And they have been trying to encourage them to come to the table.
Thank you. We'll get some more intense with it. Let's hear from...
military action approach is just one of the tools in the toolbox.
Correct.
Dialogue and talking, negotiating with these groups is another tool, a diplomatic approach. And you can see that the United States, we've repeatedly said on this program, is actually now negotiating with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, the issue of Shia Sunni,
yes.
They are ideologically quite apart. And it's very difficult to see how Shia Iran can start engaging or supporting groups like Al-Shabaab, which is Sunni Al-Qaeda. In fact, given an opportunity, they will just cannibalize each other. However, in the eastern part of Africa, the coast, Zanzibar, all the way to Mozambique, there has been some kind of intelligence war fought between, or competition between, the Israelis and the Iranians. Remember the 30 oil tankers that were flagged with the Zanzibari flag, so that the Iranians can circumvent the sanctions, the U.S. sanctions. It's actually the Israelis that discovered that and then sent that information to the U.S. and then Tanzania was put, or rather was put on the spot, and they deflagged those tankers. All this kind of work is done by the intelligence agencies in the region. So this area is quite active with foreign elements working across all the way to Mozambique. And this is going to be troublesome for us.
Yeah. Thank you. General, let's wind up with you before we drill deeper and look what is in the headlines, and of course,
yes, Debarl, I want
look
to
at
say,
the region as well.
I want to say that the Al-Shabaab problem is basically a Somalia problem. And Somalia needs to put its act in order, house in order, in the sense that, and that's why definitely the international community has found it hard to recognize it as a terror group or whatever. And unless we solve the Somali problem, we can't solve what is going on with Al-Shabaab. Secondly, we need to ask ourselves, why is Tanzania calm? Why is Ethiopia calm in terms of attacks? Why Kenya? That question needs to be answered. Once you answer that question, then you can now address the problems associated with Al-Shabaab. To me, it's not a very serious major threat, because this is a very small threat.
Yes.
As a country, we can actually marshal our resources together and address from different perspectives. The neutral line is not the only line to do this. To me, much more of it is working with our population, because acts we are seeing are acts where they come in deep into the country, and they come through areas where we have our population living, and they're surviving in the population. So that now a few of them are actually Kenyans. So my way will be change our approach. Let's work with the population.
Fantastic.
Let's go deep in there.
Right.
And then change the
So we
rules.
look at the strategy and what is really happening currently, because also the teachers who are insecure in the northern part of the
Yes.
country, this is not a problem that is just, you know, springing up on us right now. This is something that has been there. But have we gotten a prime solution even actually to deal with it as it is right now? Right. So we want to drill deeper into also the dailies this morning just to see what is happening. There was a reshuffling, and of course you know about it this morning. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Did Uhuru sack Ruto's running mate? Let me try and just remove this. That is the probing question here, fueled by an oversized ambition, quoting political martyrdom to fire career into orbit, right? This is something really coming up. I need to just deal with it. I hope it will not just act on me this morning. It says, weighed down by a very poor record of achievement in public office, Mwangi Kiunjuri stuck out his neck, and the president obliged and fed him. I'm trying to actually zoom in so that I can see to the locust. So he was fed by the locust. This is what it says. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. And I think my touchscreen now is acting up on me. It's just waiting for me to come, you know, try and get tactile with it, and then it's not really even moving right now. Yeah, this is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Let me try and tinker with it to see if it can... all right, it's hanging on me. Let me just try and move a bit and touch bits and pieces here so that we can see what is happening. Right, so this is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. The Standard, let's see if it can accept. This is the Standard for you. Uhuru fights back, it says. Too little, too late. Locust eat Kiunjuri as president launches multi-billion shilling stimulus package to jumpstart the economy and shakes up cabinet in fresh attempt to secure legacy. You have this story continuing on page 2 and 13 of the Standard this morning. The faces are here. I'll not dare touch the touch screen so that it cannot act up on me, but you can actually see also billions for farmers and small businesses. This is a bailout there. President doles out 5 billion shillings to put money in the pockets of maize, milk, rice and coffee farmers. Banks to offer cheap loans to traders after months of agony. You have this story continuing on page 10 of the Standard. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. It's not responding. Let me try to get my hard copies here so we can just fly with the hard copies. If that really fails, that is sometimes the beauty or the agony of technology. Uhuru pushes Ruto out of Mount Kenya. This is what is on the front page of the Star this morning. That is a cash in pockets. President announces a raft of measures aimed at reviving agriculture economy. That is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. Uhuru pushes Ruto out of Mount Kenya. Peter Munya replaces Mwangi Kiunjuri as Mutahi Kagwe takes over health. The story continuing on page 4 and 5 of the Star today. And he says, that is Mwangi Kiunjuri, I'm going nowhere. For every action there will be a reaction. Keep it cool, and I will keep it cool. Also, Peter Munya says, we will implement everything the president has proposed. You can read the rest of the details inside the Star this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the East African this week. Belt tightening as government kicks off CSs and PSs out of parastatal boards. This is what is on the front page of the East African this week. If you've not really grabbed your copy, all about austerity measures. A circular from the head of public service directs that the state officers should not be appointed to serve as independent members. You have the story continuing on page 5 of East Africa this week. Also, law into trade haunting EAC in 2020 unless governments take drastic action to tackle trade barriers. Economies will suffer. You can follow the story on page 4 of the East African this week. Also, future problems remain the same. Climate, health, countries reporting emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. That is a Pull Out magazine inside the East Africa this week. Page 21 and 23 of the East African this week. The Business Daily. Let's buckle down to business a bit and just show you what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. KRA posts on workers to tax cheats companies. Remember, KRA had earlier proposed that they will be sending spies to some of the companies to actually try and put tails in some of these companies that are not really paying or streamlining their tax, of course, the tax regimes, I should say. The Kenya Revenue Authority will step up the forcible posting of its staff to business owned by high-profile tax cheats in what promises to be the boldest crackdown on high net worth persons. The taxman has compiled a list of companies and wealthy individuals labeled high-risk tax debtors and will deploy its employees to sit the accounts departments of the firms to recover and pay taxes. The story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. Also, Uhuru unveils bailout to calm political base. Uhuru unveil a multi-billion shilling economic stimulus package to jumpstart the economy and pacify its political base after the amount of cash in Kenya pockets dropped to a 4-year low. That is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Also, more than half of countries or counties spend zero on projects, it says. That is another story you can follow inside the Business Daily this morning. KRA to suspend pay bills in fresh gambling tax row. Another story there. The Kenya Revenue Authority has renewed its battle with gaming firms, threatening to deactivate their pay bill number or numbers over failure to deduct and submit 20% excise tax on stakes, despite a running court battle. That story continues on page 6 of the Business Daily. 2 billion shillings is the amount today, or the digit today. That is the amount the president is targeting in monthly royalties collection. Also, cigarette prices up on high taxes. BAT Kenya has raised the prices of nearly all of its cigarettes by up to 15 shillings per packet in changes. The company said are meant to pass increased taxes to consumers. The story is tucked away on page 7 of the Business Daily. Also, we have new lending set to surpass 300 billion shillings. New lending to the private sector is expected to accelerate by double digits to hit at least 300 billion shillings this year. But the impact on headline economic growth is likely to be felt from 2021. You can follow the story on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. A quick look on what is happening also across the region briefly. Let's see what is happening in Uganda, not really Uganda, but Rwanda and also Tanzania. This is what I'll be remiss also if I don't show you maybe before we head there what is on the front page of the People Daily now that my touchscreen is back. Why Uhuru sacked defiant Kinjuri? Firefighting. Head of state moves to calm disquiet in his political backyard by firing key Ruto ally. Brings into government a team to help him turn the tide in his favor. You have this story on page 2, 4, 8 and 12 of the People Daily this morning. Also, President measures to revive agriculture sector. All the figures are given here. That is 50% KTDA to pay. That is 50% KTDA to pay farmers for their monthly tea leaves. Deliveries 3 billion shillings. Treasury ordered to set up. This is Sherry revolving fund within the next 30 days. Also 575 million shillings cash to be released to new KCC to buy excess milk from farmers and convert it to powder milk. Also 300 million shillings boost to micro and small enterprises. Authority to build cold storage facilities for potatoes and bananas. That is a story you can follow inside the People Daily this morning. Let's cross over now to Tanzania. This is a splash on the front page of the Citizen this morning. Housing nightmare for pension funds facing losses over unresponsive real estate investments. NSSF and PSSSF are seeking new means to woo buyers and tenants to buy their houses. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Citizen. Canadian gold firm declares TZ Rao. That is the story you can follow also on page 2. And Kenya's President Uhuru fires Ruto ally in cabinet reshuffle. Also, this has been picked by the Citizen in Tanzania. You can follow the story on page 3 of the Citizen. Also, EAC defends resource sharing in claim is another story that you can follow inside the Citizen this morning. Shall we now go to Rwanda and see what is happening in Rwanda this morning? Just to pick up the New Times. So I'll have to just take it afresh again to see or to avoid it really acting up on me. It's a new year, so at least it will should start on a friendlier note. So the New Times is here, and this is what we have on the front page of the New Times today. King Faisal Hospital to get $20 million facelift is what is on the front page of the New Times this morning. And also it says here, or we can see a standalone picture, this is sustainable development involves citizen. This is what Kagame is saying, President Kagame, during a presidential keynote interview of the Future Sustainability Summit conducted by British broadcast journalist Nick Gowing in Abu Dhabi yesterday. During the interaction, they discussed Rwanda sustainability development goals. The interview was held as part of Abu Dhabi's Sustainability Week, which started on Monday. You can follow the story on page 2 of the New Times in Rwanda. Right, let me just show you finally what we do have as editorial cartoon and what we'll be discussing as well. And you need also to take a copy of the week if you don't have it. This is how it looks. Death of a general. Iran swears vengeance. We shall be discussing this also with the panelists much later in the course of the program. We just had their headline thoughts. And of course, this is following the killing of the Iranian general. This is Soleimani, and this has sparked a lot of instability, especially in the Middle East as far as security is concerned. Also, that will be much later in the course of the program. But for now, we just want to hear also from our panelists, maybe to just weigh in, especially what will interest us as far as the cabinet reshuffle is concerned. We have the docket of defense now being shuffled between, Rachel Omamo and Dr. Monica Juma. Monica Juma was the CS Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course Rachel Omamo, CS Ministry of Defense. Let's just begin with you, Ahmed Hashi. What do you think about that particular development?
Well, Debarl, I think that I think this was coming. I think that there was some problems in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the gravitas was there, the hard work was there. I can say Monica Juma tried to do her best, but there was something that was out of sync. Nobody could really place it, and I think it had to do with probably the French term is, joie de vivre. Joie de vivre means this ability to be, very electrical about personal relationships, the ability to project your personality into the diplomatic world, and probably those in a combination of other issues made Monica Juma not a proper fit for the Foreign Office and probably a better fit at the Defense Office. And I welcome Ms. Omamo to the Foreign Ministry. She's been a diplomat for forever. And I think probably one of the most articulate ministers we have in the government. I think her diplomatic skills are outstanding. She comes from the same tradition as Amina Mohammed. And I think she's going to follow in the footsteps of Amina. And I think that there is going to be a chance now for many of the problems that were at the Foreign Office to be solved. And I think that if Ms. Omamo gives it all her push, I think that some of the outstanding issues that we have will be solved. Another issue is, I think that also the foreign minister, when they get appointed, they should stay, except when they cannot cross the River Jordan. And the crocodiles bite them. So I think that it's important. I think it's quite very important that we keep Ms. Omamo in that office and try to make sure that there is this kind of gravitas at that office. Second point about, I think that Ms. Omamo cannot do this on her own. Just replacing the top person does not necessarily mean that you're going to get the results. I think that Ms. Omamo should reshuffle or get new blood into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and new advisors on how she's going to move forward. And I probably think she should consult her sports minister friend, on a regular basis, because she knows a thing or two about foreign affairs. So I welcome, and I probably think the panel also welcomes Ms. Omamo. I mean, everybody wants to give her a fresh start.
But when you talk about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs having some troubles, what do you really mean? Are you privy to any troubles that you're not in the Foreign Office right now yourself?
Yeah,
yes.
You know, I think that you know, the Foreign Office needs the best and the brightest men and women in this country, because it's the face of Kenya. It's not another normal civil service institution. You know, brilliant young men like Hassan here.
All right.
You know, people like that. And the problem has been maybe the bureaucracy in there. Some of the people who are at the top may not be producing or doing the job that they need in support of the minister's office. I also think that the minister...
So are you saying certainly in a way that, you know, Dr. Monica Juma was not really cut out for this particular job?
Yes, I don't think she was cut out for this job. I think it was not a good fit for her at all.
Why do you think so? I mean, where was the undoing? Where did she not really...
I think that Monica Juma is an intellectual. I think she's very, very smart. I think she's probably one of the hardest working ministers in here. But, you know, sometimes it's just by sense of natural justice, even if you will, it's impossible sometimes when you go to a certain place and the fit doesn't work.
Thank you.
The relationships don't work, and the ideas sometimes don't work, and that brings you down. And probably the work that was there and the crisis that was there was so huge that it would take time for her to plod through it.
But what you're not telling me is about the crisis. What is this crisis you're talking about?
Well,
yeah, because we don't seem to be privy to this crisis.
There's a reason why.
Good for
I'll
us,
explain it.
Yes,
there's a
please.
reason why there's a reshuffle. I mean, if the job was being done was fantastic over there, there would be no reshuffle. The person would stay. I mean, that's evidence enough. Second thing is, the Somalia issue is completely bungled. Right now, we were having problems with Farmajo and his government. We were having problems with Ethiopia, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs was not fixing the problem. I mean, maybe the other panelists may disagree with me,
all right,
and that is why we have Ms. Omamo there.
Oh, let's just open up that particular debate. Do we have any problems with Ethiopia currently that you're privy to? What Ahmed Ashi is alluding to, Dr. Kanenje?
Yeah, I think I'll put this in a larger context. You know, first of all, I'm not aware of any internal dynamics within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I would say this: how generally I see reshuffles. There's a minister called C.S. Matiang'i. He was in education, and he did so well, and they moved him elsewhere, so he can also keep doing so well. So I don't normally look at that sometimes moving ministries simply as perhaps because someone was not actually performing. Now, having said that, you know, since I can only generally speak on what I know, sometimes I think the president perhaps may just need a fresh set of eyes. Now, MFA this past few years has actually worked very, very, very hard in. When it comes right now, one of the efforts that's being made, especially to ensure that Kenya is part of the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member. When the campaign started, literally less than a year ago by the country, I think few believed that it would actually go the AU endorsement. I think I'm proudly wearing this as recognition that we are an AU endorsed member, and diplomats watching should know that, and perhaps supporters in the United Nations when it comes to voting. And frankly speaking, I think they've done a phenomenal job in trying to get that endorsement, because we were fighting from behind, and right now we are the front runner. Of course, we're yet to get to the end. Now, with regard to other things going on within the region, Foreign Affairs Ministry is not just composed of one person. It's a set of bureaucrats, then you have other interests, and you have other support that is supposed to come in. Now, one of the things that I think I've discussed also on this program is our Foreign Affairs Office, or rather ministry, is one of the most important ministries in this country that is actually grossly underfunded. And they cannot be able to execute some of the mandate they've actually been tasked with, even just something as simple as campaigning for some important things in the United Nations Security Council. And therefore, there are a complexity of dynamics that actually have to be looked at. But I think we should put the Foreign Affairs Ministry where it should be, and perhaps give it more resources before we actually start even holding people accountable. But so far, at least based on my experience, I think in the last few years, he's actually tried to do the best. Of course, there are certain situations that might have been a little bit troublesome, at least based on, there's what happens and there's actually what comes out. But the fact that right now with Somalia, we seem not to be in a terrible state with regard to the maritime, and we got the AU endorsement, and we're moving towards the vote in June. I think, to me, it speaks that they were trying to do something, but I agree. We need to professionalize the Foreign Affairs Ministry a lot more and make sure we have a lot more competent, bureaucrats representing us in foreign countries.
Thank you. Let's hear from Erastus Moinche as well, because I think also the fallout was there. It was preeminent that between the principal secretary and also the cabinet secretary, they're not really seeing eye to eye. That is Ambassador Michael. Maybe you can weigh on that. Could this also maybe have prompted the president maybe to do the reshuffle?
Yes. Let me say at the beginning that perhaps on this table I know Monica Chuma much better than because when she was ambassador in Addis Ababa, I was at the AU, and as you know that the missions there in Addis Ababa are accredited to the AU, so I worked with her very closely. And so I know our strengths and also weaknesses. I must say that I take what my brother said, that yes, she's very strong intellectually, very strong-willed person, and I think that's perhaps, if you look at the ministry, there's no question that there's been lack of teamwork there. I mean, that was obvious here. And as a head of a ministry, your role is not that you work individually, but also to ensure that the team, and as somebody rightly says, that it's a team. And I think that leadership, to me, has been lacking. I mean, let's not go about skate around the issue.
Means my words.
That leadership has been lacking of building teamwork. Yes, strong, capable, intellectual, articulate, but teamwork was lacking. There's no question about it. And of course, then on the issues, I think the Somali issue was bungled badly. In fact, there was hue and cry to say, look, use a different approach. And we saw the president take a different approach and bring Falmajo closer when we're at the brink of really getting at each other.
But could we also maybe drill deeper on the issue of Somalia a bit, because I think we should cut also Monica Juma the flag of Somalia, because it didn't begin with Monica Juma. Before even she was in that particular docket.
It's an old issue.
This was picked also from the beginning, when the constitution, I think the former Attorney General, Githu Muigai, constituted some lawyers to actually negotiate on this maritime dispute. So we need also to make it very clear that it's not under tenure that the Somali issue has been, bungled, so to speak.
But if you remember, Debarl, at the height when things were really getting to the head, you expel the Somali diplomats here, you start to subject Somali that when they come into Kenya, they must land in Wajir and get their passport. I mean, and you are negotiating a very delicate issue, and then you are not you're using force kind of strength to force Somalia to come to the table. That approach was, I think, to me, not the best. Granted, this issue, in fact, it shouldn't even be Gitu. It was much further, because we've been sitting on the issue for a long time. And let me also touch on this issue of UN Security Council. I wouldn't say that Kenya's run at the EU was brilliant. I mean, you remember there was a vote that Kenya could not get the requisite number. And to me, when you go for such an election and you fail to get your number, it's a spat on you. But anyway, finally Kenya marshaled it, and thanks to the efforts, Kenya secured AU. But then if you look at around, even some of our neighbors are saying they're not going to vote for us. That is a very uncomfortable situation. How do you gather your intelligence? How do you get to that situation? So it means that the foreign policy has had some gaps somewhere. And let's accept that we need to repair those fences, and we need to reset our foreign policy in a better way.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa.
Debarl, I don't want to repeat what has been said. I largely agree with the panelists. Just to point on the issue of coercive diplomacy, one has to be very careful when you decide to deploy coercive diplomacy, you need to know what is in your toolbox when you actually pick that bit from the toolbox to deploy it. And within the African context, I think Kenya ought to do a lot better in dealing with other countries and ensuring that other countries fall not behind, but support Kenya's quest on a number of international issues that Kenya is following up, including the bid to the United Nations Security Council, which Kenya has done well to secure the AU's support on that. In terms of inter-country relations, I think there has been quite a bit of challenge with some of our neighbors here, and these are areas perhaps Rachel Omamo will have to deal with fast as she comes in. Rachel Omamo is an amiable, pleasant personality, sunny, smiley, and I think that kind of personality is what will help her, and she will need to move very fast and constitute a team that is going to push Kenya's agenda, not just internationally, but really within the African context. We're trading more with our African neighbors. In fact, Uganda, Tanzania, and other countries have actually overtaken countries such as United Kingdom in terms of trading. We receive more tourists from Tanzania than we actually now do from those countries that traditionally have been sending tourists. There is a lot to be done, but Debarl, then again, it's not a one-person job. It's going to be a collective effort by everybody. It's a very sensitive docket, actually. Remember, Rex Tillerson was sacked when he was here by Trump because of disagreements between those two. Not that Rex Tillerson was a bad guy or was not delivering, but it's very important that the principal and the cabinet secretaries work very closely together and address issues that are really affecting the country.
All right, General.
Debarl, for me, I want to say that it's unfortunate that we had two very powerful individuals in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In the name of the CS and the PS, my friend Machele Kamau, very powerful, both very articulate, both career diplomats who have done very well. My problem here maybe is in terms of the definition of functions, who does what. That I think wasn't very clear, because when they are both very powerful and both running with the show, want to portray themselves, then there's bound to be a clash. And for me, really, much will have remained with the PS to run the show, with the CS overseeing. Now, when the CS brings that firm hand inside, that becomes an issue. So the issue of human relations, person-to-person relations, and how you handle that, both at the immediate lower level and down there, is very crucial, and that you are able to work all as a team, as one team. This was so crucial for us now, because Kenya is vying for a position in the Security Council. You can't have differences in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I want to put a point very strongly that I have full confidence in our diplomats. The diplomats have done very well at all levels, both in foreign and in the missions. They have done very well. And people have been actually envious of how we've done things. What we need is that good guidance, good leadership, and unity at the headquarters. Yes.
All right, let's hear from Professor Noami Damba. I think this is really right up your alley, foreign policy and defense.
Combine both, Debarl. I agree, I concur with what my friends have said. Here are the few things that I like to say, Debarl. Amina Mohammed, during her time, Kenya's never had a clear foreign policy. From the beginning, it was policy run by president. Each president defined whatever they want. And Amina Mohammed created the first Kenya foreign policy. I happened to participate on it, and that policy addressed the issue of diaspora, Kenya diaspora, for the first time, and the issue of trade. And so we're not one of the world power. We want balance of trade between Kenya and the rest. We want we want advantage when we trade with Korea, when we trade with China and everything. And MENA was superior in that area. I can tell you, give you an example. We have roughly about 3,000 Kenyan physicians in America, and roughly about the same thing in Europe. And yet, we're going to Cuba to bring doctors here. You know, and so diaspora is actually bringing more income than the trade that we do on a day-to-day basis. So where does the interest of Kenya lies? And therefore, the squabble between the CS and the PS does not help Kenya at all. And I think we can put our best foot forward. We can put the right foot, the right people, the right mix of people. I believe these two individuals are credible in defense and also in foreign policy, but they all have to harmonize under the president's command. They all have to harmonize defense, because defense is not going to be coercion. We will not win by coercion.
All right.
In the era of war and peace, diplomacy takes the upper hand.
All right, thank you, thank you. But we need to also look at what are the strengths that Monica Juma is actually bringing to this particular docket. First of all, from the intellectual vigor, you know, that you need to be very strategic also when it comes to the defense of his country, and compared to Monica Juma as well. Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Kaneja.
Yeah, I think one thing that Dr. Juma has, you know, she has a background. She's worked in the defense, you know, ministry before. And perhaps what an average Kenyan might not realize is you cannot separate defense and foreign affairs. They actually work together. Right now, our defense ministry is executing part of Kenya's foreign policy in the region. Okay, and so they have to work together. They have to understand. Now, you know, amid all the, you know, the whole abaloo that is going on, one thing that Prof had just mentioned, and is something we've been discussing, is for a long time there was really no clear foreign policy for the country. Now, if you're going to bring a foreign affairs minister or a secretary of state, but you do not have a clear foreign policy, sometimes that is where the challenge is. There has to be a framework, not just because you have the larger foreign policy, you have the regional foreign policy, you have foreign policy towards, you know, different, you know, issues a country has adopted. So that framework, of course, has to be made clear for every directorate within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So when bureaucrats come in, they actually know what are the guiding principles, so they do not just wake up on a whim and then decide they're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so there's a systemic challenge that we also have to address. Now, I agree our diplomats have actually done great. Not everybody, but some leading diplomats have actually done, you know, a phenomenal job. And because most of this work is behind doors and therefore Kenyans can't really see, they might not really appreciate the extent to which, you know, they've made this sacrifice. Number two, I always believe, you know, sometimes when you get leadership, you know, it's important to have a fresh, you know, set of eyes and ears and brains. Now, however, in certain institutions, you have to do it very carefully, because you could have individuals who have institutional memory. They know what has been going on. They're the ones who build those relationships. If you move them quickly, you lose it. And in the world of diplomacy, that is very, very important. And so if you, let's say you come into the docket and then you decide, I'm going to get rid of everybody around me and have new people who do not know what has been going, it's going to take you another 5 years to actually before you even settle in. And by that time, the country has lost. You understand? Number three, assessments of foreign affairs ministers, they're normally measured based on the success of key issues that have faced the country during their tenure internationally. Understand? And so they're foreign affairs ministers who might have been very loved by the country, but when you look at significant achievements, they were zero. Why? Because probably they were just good politicians and, you know, they moved there. And so we also have to be careful when you're actually trying to make these measurements of success. It has to be pegged on during this crisis when Kenya wanted this, how did we perform?
Right, Ahmed Ashi.
Debarl, when the president is...
No, let's hear from General. I haven't heard from General. General, then Ahmed Ashi.
Yes, first, I want to say that Rachel has done very well at the Ministry of Defense. She's done very, very well. And so long as you're able to relate with the generals, you have no problem. And the good thing is, we have the civilian component and the military component, and the two find it very easy to work together, very easy. And therefore, Monica coming in will find it very easy to work in defense. All along, our ministers have done very well. For Rachel, very motherly, very understanding. I can assure you, I have full confidence she'll do very well.
But for Monica, this is not a new domain, actually.
For who?
Yeah, she's been there before as the principal secretary in defense.
Monica was with us. In fact,
Yes.
that was her first assignment in government when she came from her tour as ambassador in Addis. And she served very well. And then went on to the Ministry of Interior and picked up her first post as CS in foreign. So she's coming back to meet old friends. That will help her and give her comfort that she's back at home and she'll do well among the generals. Yes.
But we need to maybe ask you also the issue of El Ade, when we had also, Al-Shabaab attacking our soldiers at that particular military camp. There were questions that we are still asking, or Kenyans are still asking, about the soldiers that, they were captured by these militants in Somalia. Up to today, we do not really know their whereabouts. So how would you even assess maybe her performance during that particular very ticklish time as a country, where we have some of our soldiers up to today, we do not know where they are, they've not gotten any information. I don't know. Maybe you are the experts who can actually enlighten me on this.
Well, the minister has little in this.
How did we handle it? Because even after 3 months, we had even family members who are not really aware about, their family members who are, in the forces.
Yeah, a number of areas still remain grey in terms of El Ade, and I know we have sometimes been careful in terms of how we put it forward. Yes, there are soldiers who are still missing, and I know every effort is being done to try and find out where they are and recover them. I also know that in terms of the families, we have gone back to work very closely with them in terms of support. But those missing remains an ongoing process, and I hope in the near future we'll be able to recover them wherever they are.
Okay, all right. Let's hear from Mohammed Ashi.
Well, Debarl, I'm a politician. I like to speak my mind and not mince any words. I think that it's terrible that we haven't gotten those people back yet. It's a failure on our part. We need to have done a much, much, much better job. Second thing, I oppose this idea of keeping secrets about soldiers who have died. I think we need to celebrate them, and we need to say they died. We need to give them burials that are dignified and honest, and we need to be open about these things. Third thing, it's in the character of this nation and in the political and bureaucratic class to be a bit secretive and not ruffle any feathers. It's not my tradition. I think that Omama was a bad fit for the defense place. But I think she'll be a wonderful job in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's my opinion, Debarl, when I come here to do... Listen, Debarl, when we come here...
Yeah, it's true. I agree with you.
Debarl, when you come here to speak about the public, it's my time to speak, and I'd like to just say
please,
what I want.
Okay.
If I'm allowed, because I do not interfere
continue.
with anybody when you're speaking. So I think it's important for us when we come here, it's a civic duty to inform Kenyans about their politics and the economy and what's going on in the region. And if you can't be able to do some analysis that's really forthright, I think it's you're hedging your bets. So I think that Ms. Omamo is going to be a great at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I cannot wait to see the back of, hopefully in the new system is coming, where you have politicians in these cabinet positions, so that the permanent secretary knows where their place is, and there's no question about it. And if he tries anything, he'll be sacked. So the thing about it is, when you have two technocrats at the same place, there's this racehorse, and that's not helping us. So we want to see the back of this system. We want to see politicians in the ministries as head of ministries. Third point, I think that it's important to call out these things in a way, because Debarl, you see, foreign affairs, internal security, defense constitute the major phalanx of the government of Kenya's protection of its citizens. So we cannot be, itsy bitsy tipsy spider about it. We have to be very blunt about it, so that the Kenyan public knows what's going on in their political economy. And I think that now, Ms. Omamo is going to do a great job there. I really think so. I think she's going to fix these files that are there. I think she's going to be working. Hopefully she'll bring in, as my friend there said, a new team that's going to oversee this, because there's so many problems in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Department of Defense. I actually think that Monica Juma is going to do a great job in the Ministry of Defense,
right?
As opposed to the Foreign Office. I think she's a tough iron lady who is going to look for answers, and she intellectually understands the issues of the military and refugees, and I think that she'll do a better job there, and she's a better fit there.
All right. Yeah. All right. We will circle back with more on the other side of the break. We want to take a short break right now. It is 7 on the nose. Don't go away.
Eldoret Technical Training Institute. Registration for January, May and September 2020 intakes is ongoing. Apply now. Eldoret Technical Training Institute. Growing reputation.
A new day is breaking at one of the oldest Christian universities in the country.
Daystar had excelled in the training of communications experts, so now we thought of setting up a school of law to train lawyers who would support this media personnel plus other people in their work.
We would like our students to go to these courts of law well versed with the understanding of what justice is.
To be professionals, researchers, scholars who will serve church and society.
Welcome to the Daystar School of Law. Shine on like the stars and the sun, for your day has broken.
Gazeti lililoboreshwa la Mwanaspoti linakuletea mengi ya kufurahisha macho na moyo. Kwa taarifa zote za soka, riadha za kusisimua, burudani za kitaifa na kimataifa ambazo zitakukonga moyo, bila kusahau vuvumio na usasa katika fasheni na ulimwende. Yote haya katika toleo jipya lililoboreshwa la gazeti la Mwanaspoti
utakalopata kila Jumanne na Jumamosi na sasa la Alhamisi
kwa shilingi 35 tu. Pata toleo lako sasa.
The Three Sides of Anna.
Did he tell you anything? Or what?
Oh, honey, my dear. Forgive me, please. He was standing before me for a few seconds.
I always dreamt that my mother would come back to us someday. Feeling sorry to have abandoned me. But it turned out to be the worst moment of all.
This is something I would like to do with you.
I know what your intentions are.
Ana Laura, this is not about us. This is for the children. You can't refuse that, right?
Let me remind you that your life is not the only one at risk. Marcelo Salvatierra is a threat for me too. He's that dangerous. The Three Sides of Anna.
With Lipa na M-Pesa, you get more. Every 100 shillings spent on Lipa na M-Pesa earns you an entry into the draw. Do more with Lipa na M-Pesa. Look at this. And this. So this? Why is this so? The culture of good driving and road safety starts with attending the right driving school and receiving the right driving instructions. Now you know. AA Kenya.
Register today for your driving classes. Dial *650#.
For 100 years now, AA has walked with you throughout the journey. Automobile Association of Kenya. You never drive alone.
Welcome back. You're watching Standing Guard, where we keep an eye on the enemy, and we continue with the conversation at pace about the cabinet reshuffle. And of interest for this particular forum is the docket of foreign affairs and defense, which we have a very also animated debate upon or on with our panelists this morning. Before we took a short break, we were hearing from General Brigadier Ahmed Mohammed. Right, let's cross over now to Ahmed Hashi on this. So let's just try and analyze the strength and weaknesses.
Debarl, I think you're giving me a disproportionate amount of the hard questions, but I will answer it. The thing about it is, Debarl.
What do you mean?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Am I being fair to you?
No, yes, you are being fair. You've always been fair to me. We've started a long time ago together.
You continue that.
Debarl, I think that part of the BBI and part of the building bridges that we're moving to is we learn by experience. We learned that some things in our constitutions don't work. We learned before we thought that we could put technocrats in there and they could do a great job, and some of them have and some have not. It has now become clear that all these wrangles and all these insubordinations need to be dealt with a system in which a politician is at the helm, and there's a chain of command. When there's no chain of command, well, then the policy doesn't work. Everybody needs to know where the buck stops, and everybody needs to know who is the boss. And once you have that, and that person is accountable to the National Assembly, the job gets done. That's one. Second, all these technocrats, Debarl, bring certain strengths and certain weaknesses. We're used to a command system in which independence is not very much valued, and following orders and doing the things that are supposed to be done. Of course, the bureaucracy was modeled under the British Raj and under the military system. So I think that it is important for us to have bureaucracies that work, that have a command structure. Now, putting the bureaucrats in charge of the political agenda of a ministry is an entirely different thing. And politicians have an antennae. They have in Latin there's a concept called nobles de robe. The people who wear the robe of politics, the people who wear the concept of politics. And those people are able to determine in split seconds what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And I think that bureaucrats may not know that. And I think that it's really important, and I'm not saying that some bureaucrats don't do it. Henry Kissinger was not a politician, he was a bureaucrat. And he did, if you're from the right, you agree with him. If you're from the left, you never agreed with him. But the fact that he was very famous tells you that even a bureaucrat can do something. But we need to go back to our British system of parliamentary democracy, where a member of parliament is chosen to represent his constituency, and he goes to the ministry and he's accountable to the National Assembly. Last point about, I think it doesn't make any sense that for us to say anything negative about women who have been given positions of power. I'm a very strong supporter of women holding political seats because I have daughters and I want them to go there, and they will kill me if I say something negative. But I also think that once you get there, the gender issue goes, and you have to produce and you have to make sure that you do the job the way it's supposed to be done. And sometimes when the fit is not there, we ought to change you. And I think that the president has done the right thing to bring Ms. Maina into trade, who's a very competent person. Yes, industrialization. And we have defense and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have women. This shows a commitment to gender in this country, but the job must be delivered now. The files need to be delivered. The crisis in Somalia needs to be fixed that we had, and the president, do you know what is the basic measurement of knowing what a foreign minister's job is? If the president is doing her job or his job. If the president is doing foreign affairs, that's when you know the minister is not doing her job.
All right. Okay, so we have also Monica actually coming to defense. We know that the rating of Kenya as it is right now, according to the Global Fire Index, is 86 out of 137. And the Power Index, I think also that has risen so far. Would you think she has, the grit and, the stamina and the expertise really to take us a notch higher? I don't know this particular assessment. Maybe you are the expert. You can bring me up to speed as far as this is concerned.
Debarl, when General Powell took command of the State Department.
The Global Fire Index, we'll come to it.
No, I come to it.
Okay.
And you may find it doesn't mean much. He took command of the State Department and lined up all the top senior State Department people and have them do 40 push-ups. And anyone who did not meet the criteria need rehearsement and need training in order to meet that point. What was the symbolic gesture on this is that we're marching toward B, And there is a very clear criteria where we are going. There is a policy of the United States, and everyone is going to march toward there. And if you have any doubt or concern, then let's talk about it. So we march together. The issue is 86 and 137 really don't mean much if we don't deal with fundamental. Fundamental is what do we need to improve on, okay? In terms of foreign affairs and defense. Defense, you have to get along with this general. If you don't get along with the general, you can't go anywhere.
I get along with him fine.
Yeah, the point is you rule through people. That's what Powell was good at. He's good at defense, he's good at diplomacy, because he is personalize it and excel on it, and people, he has integrity, and people can charisma, and people respect it. So the point, my point is, in foreign service, the gaps, the things that we can do in foreign service for Kenya to have competitive advantage. One was, I have advocated for many years to appoint Consul General. They are Kenyans in the United States, they are Kenyans in Europe, they are Kenyans in South Africa, they are Kenyans in Asia and elsewhere, that are very, very well established. Let me tell you, in America, unless you have someone in the front of Congress, in front of the president, that understand that you are competent enough to convince them, you can't get much out of Congress. And who goes before Kiwani's Club? Who go before Rotary Club? Who go before Iowa potato farmer?
Thank you.
To convince.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you need someone to come up with a very clear strategy in order for Kenya to advantage.
Debarl, I'm not sure that I'm a big fan of this global power index, because global firepower index, because this is part of, for lack of a better word, trying to cause competition among the world, countries, so that you can come up with buying more equipment from the US or Russia, so that you can be seen to be, powerful. Germany doesn't have strong power, doesn't have nuclear weapon, because it was not allowed to. Japan doesn't have. But look at the citizen, the development they've achieved. And I think we must be careful, because this has been done so that we can buy more aircraft, more helicopters from those countries, so that we can be seen to be doing well. I think we must run away and think of, you see, part of the failures I see today of the American policy is because they believe that in using hard power, military power, but you can use soft power like Obama did and succeed. So I think Kenya can still achieve much by being on the soft power. Our neighbors don't need power for us to be able to show that we are present. What you need is enough to be able to show that if provoked, if invaded, you can repel the enemy, but not to amass those so that you are number 10, number 20. I think we must run away from that.
Right. Well, we should be winding up on this as well. Dr. Khanenje, let's just hear from you briefly.
I think with regard to the two main changes, I think that have occupied most of the morning session here, Dr. Juma is going back home. She's been there, and I think she's, a remarkable lady. She's going to do a good job. Rachel is moving to a new house. She's actually going to need a lot of help in trying to put things together. However, the success of each of these ministries depends on very well, clearly defined mission. Now, if it's in defense, they need to get a clear mission what they're supposed to be doing in Somalia and, of course, elsewhere. And then what are other parts of government departments going to do to support that, because they cannot succeed alone. When it comes to MFA, again, and go back to the question, it's true. I think the consul generals and stuff like that, those people need to be considered. But again, as I've said, MFA is grossly underfunded. Actually, they get extremely little money for them to be able to execute Kenya's foreign policy in a way that can bring the bacon back home.
Right, but we need to also see how they've been able to streamline the foreign policy before. For the longest time, until 2014 is when Kenya actually had its first foreign policy, isn't it? And we also know he talked about the diaspora with a huge remittance that I think was now even hitting 280 billion shillings here in the country. So far from the foreign ministry, we've not seen the Kenya diaspora policy being streamlined as it is for the longest time ever. I think that should be, a key component of Rachel Omamo's docket right now to try and see how can they really try and streamline that particular diaspora policy. Let us just wind up on this, General.
Yeah, I want to mention that it's very hard to measure the performance of a CS in the Ministry of Defense. It's very hard. Remember, for a long time, Defense had no minister. In fact, our first minister, second minister, came in the Kibaki regime. For the last almost 20 years, we had no minister. We were reporting straight to the president, and the CDF straight to the president, who is the commander-in-chief. And therefore, that CS can't come out as much as you want to see, and therefore measuring that person is very tricky. And that's why I want to stand firm and say that I have no issue with Rachel. It was very hard to measure her based on what she was going through. The generals ran the show most of the time, and therefore, as long as you can fit in terms of human relations and see things going, you have no problem. You can't measure her there. But I agree. My friend Hashi won't agree with me, or will agree with me now, that let's see how she performs in foreign.
But realistically, does the CS really run the show, or is it just ceremonial? Because I think the generals really do run the show at the end of the day.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. We'll see her now in foreign, where she's in the lead now alone.
She's in her element.
Yes, we'll see her now. So for defense, I'll ask Hashi, please don't judge her. Let's see her now how she performs.
I didn't judge her. What I said was that some of the issues around defense that Debarl brought up, LRD, the soldiers who are missing and all these things, I agree with you actually, General, that a cabinet secretary who goes to the Ministry of Defense with 5-star, 4 and 3-star generals next to her is a bit intimidating. I probably think we should appoint generals as CSs in the Ministry of Defense.
But one point to add on. One point to add on. One point to add on also.
From this panel.
I'm trying to plug you in.
No. I'm not where I am. But also, I want to mention that where there is a weakness also in terms of how to do business. Let's remember, those 3 ministries are very key: Interior, Foreign, and Defense. And these 3 make the National Security Advisory Council, and they meet frequently. And where there's a gap somewhere, the 3 should be able to meet together, resolve issues, and see one common endeavor from all of them. My interest.
Okay. All right, I think we should finalize on it and move to South Sudan and what is happening, especially with the peace truce right now. If I may just turn to my auto cue there on camera 7 so that we can roll on with over the auto cue there. And just
Jack, who's been freed from
yes. We shall look into that momentarily as after this particular story. All right. Seems I don't have it on a hard copy. Well, yeah, we have it here. The South Sudan's government and opposition groups have recommitted, I should say, to truce agreement to avoid further armed conflict following peace talks in Rome. The agreement comes following a meeting hosted and mediated by the community of Saint Egidio, a lay Catholic organization which, with ties to the Vatican, it says. The cessation of hostilities agreement will come into effect on January the 15th. Which is today, both Amom Okeich and head of government delegation Barnaba Marial Benjamin praised Pope Francis for pushing for a diplomatic solution to South Sudan's conflict. South Sudan descended into civil war in 2013 when President Salva Kiir accused his former deputy and fellow former rebel leader Riek Machar of plotting a coup. About 380,000 people have died in the conflict and some 4 million fled their homes. Of course, we've been following closely what has been happening in South Sudan here on Standing on Guard after also the Pope went down and kissed these 2 leaders of South Sudan. We can see, yes, there's some fruits which now they're coming to bear as far as that particular truce is concerned. We just want to also weigh in with our panelists on this who have been following the happenings in South Sudan. Let's just begin with you, Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, first of all, Debarl, and I'm sure you're going to raise this later, with regard to South Sudan, we are gratified and happy that Peter Biara Jack has been pardoned or released or whatever name has been used. We have always believed that the people of Biara Jack's gravitas, intellect, and exposure are the people that are really going to bring real change in South Sudan. I'm glad that Sante Gidio, which is a community that is renowned in peacemaking, they are the ones who really made a difference in Mozambique, when Mozambique was in darkness and there was a lot of blood letting in that particular country, and that they are following in Pope Francis' footsteps to try and help these two individuals who, I must say, continue to be very reckless. Tribal entrepreneurs putting up the Nuer and the Dinkas flags up there, not that of South Sudan. We hope that there will be a change of leadership in that country, and there will be a regeneration of another set of leaders that do not have the bush freedom fighting mindset that they come with to become statesmen and women in Juba.
Okay, right. Erastus Mwencha.
Well, if the information I have is right, is that Riek Machar is going to arrive in Juba, or has arrived, and that will be a major step in implementing the peace accord that was signed some time back. But as Mustafa said, there's so much water under the bridge that has passed under the bridge between the two.
Yes.
One has to be cautious that the kind of government they're going to craft is not one of, again, this was the cause of all these young people arrested like Peter, who felt that it was kind of trying to bring warlords to the table and not to address the economic challenges, because the country's got lots of problems. The refugees on the ground, people still not having enough food to eat, infrastructure not developed. And I think the more that we continue to be in these posh hotels negotiating with the people suffering, the more chances and opportunities we meet. So here is an opportunity. If it's there, international community has put a lot of pressure. You know that the vice president, if I have got the right recollection, he used to be with Machar. He broke out, but now the Americans have sanctioned him. So there's a lot of pressure from the international community, and that pressure should continue so that we can see that country back on the road to recovery.
All right, so we're still eagerly waiting to see also the transitional government being shaken into place. I think that was pushed 6 months down the line as well, right? Let's hear from Hassan Khanenje.
The fact that it has to take popular intervention for South Sudanese to make peace, it's actually really embarrassing. In fact, I think the head of the government delegation in Rome himself admitted that they're responding to Pope's humility, and that has made them very ashamed. That the Pope has to be physically in the room, kiss their feet for them to come to peace with each other as people in South Sudan. And of course, they gave themselves a limited, the 100 days, they're going to pass. And if they don't put in place mechanisms to ensure that actually the peace sticks, again, it's just going to be another story. There may be another postponement. And so that has to be done. Now, what has been worrying, though, especially in the region, is the regional countries don't seem to be speaking with the same voice. And, regions generally tend to have a lot more influence on a country, especially in the context of Africa or the developing world, than actually outsiders. And I think we need to move forcefully as IGAD members and the members of the larger East African community and the African Union to actually help these guys achieve peace. Remember, most of them don't live in Australia. They may have property there, but they live here. They live in the region. Their children live around here. And they have property, of course, in this part of the world. And so I think even as the Pope is doing their best, as Africans, we should also do our best. And of course, we're happy that Peter is out. We're looking forward to hopefully perhaps having him on the show to contribute, make contribution that he was doing. But I think it's not just something that we have to leave it to the Pope alone. And as Africans, as Kenya, especially being a frontier country and a country that has invested heavily actually in the peace in South Sudan, and a country that lost greatly when South Sudan went into civil war, we have to rethink. And as Rachel, of course, comes into the docket, I think that should be one of the issues, that what happened to a country that we literally midwifed, and increasingly we've been sidelined. And I think we need to play a more central role as Kenya.
Hashi.
Rachel Omamo is cousins with the folks in South Sudan. Probably going to understand each other much better. Debarl, on a serious note, I think that the idea of non-intervention in the internal affairs of African states died and was buried in South Sudan. If there's a country that really needs intervention from the regional states and from their military forces, it's South Sudan, because the catastrophe that can happen there would be a massive humanitarian crisis, and we don't want Europeans and Americans to come and say, oh, poor Africans, you dropped the ball again and we're going to try and fix it for you. So, you know, it's some of the things that are 50 years out of independence we need to have left behind. That's one. Second is the political leadership in South Sudan. We really hope that this elections and democratization and political parties come soon, because we can have alternatives like Peter Ajak, probably, great South Sudanese who loves his country and is going to try and do the best for his country. And we can get the regular, politicians out, hopefully, and we can move South Sudan, which has vast resources, vast oil, vast forest, vast fertile land. And I mean, absolutely no reason for it to be a failed state, except for the human beings or the political leadership that are there. And last point about the people of South Sudan, an ancient people. They gave birth to the Somalis and they built the pyramids together in centuries past, thousands of years ago. And I think that it is our duty as Africans to make sure that that civilization in South Sudan is not going to go down the road of a failed state and intertribal warfare. And we are the government of this country, and with Rachel, I think that the first two things, and the first three things she needs to do is Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia.
Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Somalia.
Yeah.
Right. Let's hear finally from Professor Naomi Damba.
Debarl, there is one man that I would like to acknowledge in the whole team, and that is Dr. Benjamin Muriel, our friend, and I'm very proud that we brought him to KCA University and gave him honorarium causa for all the work that he has done. Benjamin Muriel was former Minister of Foreign Affairs. I got sick a little bit. He was right here in Kenya, recuperated, and now the senior advisor to the president and in charge of all foreign affairs issues. He is very, very focused. First of all, making sure that people like Peter are out, and then embracing South Sudanese that are like Peter to come in the fold. So I will not be very surprised when Peter move into the system, so that they can move on the issue of peace, substantive peace. That's what is happening. And I agree particularly with the words of Kanenje. Regions of South Sudan have got to get together and stop benefiting from the kind of havoc that is happening in Sudan. People, all kind of characters are there, selling arms, proliferation of arms, and benefiting out of them. And we don't want South Sudan to turn out and be the Democratic Republic of Congo, a failed state. And so I'm very positive at this point where we are, and we look forward to welcome South Sudan.
Thank you.
Among our midst.
Right, Brigadier.
I've always been told since my college days that the maintenance of international peace and security rests with the UN, and specifically the Security Council. What I find in South Sudan is very interesting, in that we have so many actors who don't seem to consolidate their effort. Sudan has the third largest UN peacekeeping mission. South Sudan has IGAD on ground. South Sudan has AU involved. Now we have other actors coming in, and that effort seems to be very much dispersed. I wish we could consolidate all this effort into one common endeavor and try to find a common solution. Up to today, I still understand what the UN is doing in South Sudan. They don't seem to be in the lead in terms of the peace process. They support it, but not in the lead. They should be in the lead. IGAD is trying its best also. AU is there. I feel that it's time we actually call them together and march this effort towards a common endeavor.
But if I could just respond to what the General said, I think the UN, as it is today, that's why Africa has been fighting that there must be reform of the UN. UN, where there's converging interests, particularly among the P5, that's when it works. Anytime there is divergence among the P5, the big five, as it were, permanent five, nothing works. I mean, we have had the UN forces in Congo for the last 60 years. What has happened? In any case, if you look at even Somalia, why did you have to move to Somalia? Because the UN system could not work. Because even the way they mandate, and it's so difficult under Chapter 7 and Chapter 6, it's so difficult. So UN as it is must be reformed if it is going to be able to carry its mandate.
Right. Okay, and of course we're celebrating the release of Peter Biara-Jack, who has been a regular panelist here on Live. This has been after 2 years. Peter Biara-Jack, imprisoned Cambridge student released, lawyer says. This was 2 weeks ago, and it says Peter Biara-Jack had been a critic of his country's regime and was studying for a PhD when arrested in July 2018. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison in June, but his lawyer said he had been pardoned and released on Saturday. Mr. Jack said words cannot express how grateful he was for the support he and his family had received. It has meant so much to us and given us the strength we needed. It's a new year and a new decade, and my wish is that this year will be the start of a lasting peace in South Sudan, he added. Here is his picture. And shortly before his arrest, Mr. Jack had tweeted about Sudan's so-called leaders. His lawyers, Jared Gensa, said his client was one of Sudan's lost boys displaced by the country's civil war. And of course, we were really advocating for his release here on AM Live, trying also to ask you to join the petition that was being fronted by some of the students there from Cambridge. And he's been very vocal, of course, trying to talk about South Sudan here in the program. This is just some of the snapshots that we have also online that you can try and Google Peter Biara-Jack and just see how vocal he was, especially when he's talking about the generation exit, that we need a new breed of leaders in South Sudan. I think also that really ruffled the feathers of the authorities there. Right, we want to see also another peace troop that is happening, unless we have any other comment on South Sudan. Libya's fragile ceasefire. We have the pro-Haftar forces announcing ceasefire after calls from Kremlin, and this is both sides of Libya, or in Libya's conflict, agreed to a ceasefire from Sunday to end 9 months of fighting, following weeks of international diplomacy and calls for a truce by power brokers, that is Russia and Turkey. The oil-rich North African country has been wrapped by bloody turmoil since 2011 NATO-backed uprising killed long-time dictator Muammar Gaddafi. With the multiple foreign powers now involved, the UN-recognized government of the National Accord in Tripoli had been under attack since last April from forces loyal to eastern-based strongman Khalifa Haftar, which on January the 6th captured the strategic coastal city of Sirte. Later on Saturday, Haftar forces announced a ceasefire starting at midnight. In line with joint call by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Gene head Fayez al-Rassaj, who met Erdogan in Istanbul on Sunday, confirmed the ceasefire had taken effect. And of course, we just want to look at this briefly as well. This hold as it is, very fragile as it's being called, anything can actually make the tinderbox just explode. Let's just begin with you, Dr. Hassan Kanenja.
I think if there's anything to learn from Libya is what not to do in foreign countries by the West. Now, this Sarkozy-Clinton-led war, and I call Sarkozy-Clinton because they were literally the architects of actually this war, and I think that cost candidate Hillary Clinton some votes among the liberals in the United States in 2016, because then she was seen as a warmonger.
Yes.
Now, you have Libya has become another theater of competition by external powers, both from the Middle East and from Europe, frankly speaking. And a lot of times, of course, there is an interest. I think if Libya didn't have oil, no one would be paying attention to it. But that's also increasingly an acknowledgement of the failure of the international system and the international law the way we know it. You see, countries cannot just be allowed to intervene in other countries as they please. But increasingly, we've seen the weakening of the international framework in terms of governance and international peace and security, to the extent that today countries just elect to invade another country or to support a rebel movement in another country or to support competing camps. Now, the question is, where are we going from here? We are living in an increasingly uncertain world. And I think as Africans, we have to seriously consider what our options are. We've been left to the dictates, by and large, of the big powers for far too long. And part of it because of our own inability to actually fix our problems or even make a credible case within the United Nations forums. And so part of my challenge that I can put to African leaders, if you do not want constant intervention, is you need to respect yourself and you need to establish frameworks and governance that can actually be adhered to. Number two, there's been a move to establish standby forces by the AU. I think we need to find a way of actualizing that one and then making them more robust, get resources for them, so we don't have foreigners coming to mess around in our kitchen. And I think number three, we have to be united. One of the challenge is African Union is increasingly becoming like the Arab League, not agreeing on fundamental things that actually affect Africa. And if you don't do that, then no one else is going to take you seriously or even want to work with you as a group.
Right, thank you. Ahmed Hashi, briefly.
No, I'm going to take it further. I think the AU chairman, whom we elected, I think from Mali, is missing in action. Chad, was it? He's from Chad. Yeah. He's missing in action. I haven't seen what the AU has been doing recently, and we've put great faith in the AU, and some of our best and brightest have been working in there, no pun intended. The point of the matter is Libya did not get into this quarrel by itself. There was an uprising against Mr. Gaddafi, and the whole thing was turned on its head. And Obama's largest foreign policy failure, probably the only failure he had in foreign relations, was Libya. Yeah. He himself says that. You don't have to take my word for it. So I think that the African Union has let Libya to be an Arab affair. It has let it to be an Italian affair. This is not an Arab affair. Those are Moors who live there. They're Africans. And Berbers, and they're probably the oldest Africans we have. And so I think it's very bad that the AU and its officers have not been on the ground dealing with issues of Libya, particularly when young Africans from the sub-Saharan area go through there to try and travel through Europe, and there's a lot of human rights abuse on them. There's all these issues that the AU could be working, and it's not, and I think someone is sleeping on his job there. Last point. I think that someone needs to capture Tripoli and form a government and stabilize Libya. We cannot continue to have two competing armies fighting over the spoils of Libya. Someone needs to take charge, and then you need to press them for democratic government. We need to press them for parliament. We need to press them for all these issues. And having one side fighting here and another side fighting here, in the middle, the Libyan people are suffering. So I think someone needs to take Tripoli and form a government and stabilize Libya, so that all these foreign interventions and all these involvement of these other countries are thrown out, and Libyans start taking charge of their lives and their government.
Right. General.
But this is very clear that I'll take a different perspective, that in a war with Iran today will be the mother of all battles. And we have seen that Libya and Iraq are good examples. And in fact, the US is now acknowledging that the world was better with Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. Yes, it was better. Adding on Iran now will be something very, very serious. And my point here is that what we need to avoid, and in fact, one is respond in time. The UN has tried, not much has come out of it. The AU must come in. It's taking too long to come in actively and change what is going on. In the absence of the two, what happens? Other actors come in. When other actors come in, like what we are seeing now, things become very, very complicated. Haftar alone is not very strong. Haftar is strong because of support from partners. Other partners have come behind her to push for this. So to me, really, the AU put its act in order and we move in speed and control the situation.
Right. Maybe Ambassador should tell us why AU has been slow for the mark to actually try and intervene in Libya.
Yes, there is a history to that, because remember when the NATO forces attacked, at that time when they attacked Gaddafi and decapitated him, there was an AU delegation of heads of state and government in Nouakchott en route to Libya to go and broker an agreement. But Sarkozy, because Sarkozy was so much against Gaddafi, managed to convince Obama, and Obama then gave a go-ahead for the NATO forces to bomb. And of course, the rest is history. But I think what has been said, AU then of course went back and said, you've destroyed, now build. They were reluctant to lead because they're the ones. AU was proposing a different route. But the West, led by NATO and the US, were taking this route. AU then went back and said, you created the mess, clean it up. They were unable. Of course, AU now finally went back. In fact, there was a time President Jakaya Kikwete was appointed as AU envoy. But then when he got there, he found everybody's interested. Yes. And so complicated. Finally, I don't even think he's still there. He walked away. Yeah. So it's not that AU has not been interested, but precisely what was said, how not to go about managing these affairs. But you know now, Turkey has moved in to say they want to support the government of national accord, and they even want to move in military. Of course, Egypt, which is a neighbor, supporting with Moscow, they are supporting this Haftar. And so it is becoming a theater that is beyond really AU to manage. How are you going to call Moscow to come? It's no longer an internal issue of Libya that AU can tackle. It's a global issue. This is where the UN should come back to manage, and not AU.
Okay, Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, but Libya is now becoming a theater of a serious ideological competition, where you have Turkey with their brand of ideology now trying to secure the government in Tripoli. You have Egypt and other partners, including the United Arab Emirates and others, that are struggling to ensure that that kind of ideological competition does not actually occur and mess up Libya further. I was in Libya before the war. I was there during the war itself, even when the AU delegation was actually getting into Tripoli, but was turned away because of NATO bombing. Resolution 1973, that was supposed ostensibly to protect the civilians in Benghazi, was stretched to move to regime change, and it has created all the mess that we are seeing today. Now, AU has been meaning well. Libya supported AU, and AU wanted to support Libya. Right now, it's highly unlikely that the AU will be able to actually function as it could have before the war itself in Libya. The reason for that is what Ambassador Mwencha has given. Is, you know, the French is working with Egypt and others to have Haftar attack on Tripoli. And then you have the other powers supporting the government of national accord in Tripoli. It's a very complicated situation, and it's up to the UN to come and fix what it actually broke. And I agree with some of my colleagues, including Hashi, that Tripoli should be taken, and you need a strong team there, that you need a strong authority there that is going to ensure that Libya actually comes out of the doldrums that it's in. Libya is a very rich country in terms of oil and resources. But now it's becoming a backyard where you have all traffickers and kidnapping rings and terrorist groups operating in Libya.
Isn't that deliberate?
Isn't
that deliberate to just make sure that...
But Debarl, yes. Although it's deliberate, there is of course side effect of it. Europe is now very keen to solve that problem of Libya because of migration, people passing through Libya. And you saw Sarkozy, I mean not Sarkozy, but Macron yes, has convened the meeting of the P5 from West Africa. That's where also took the EU chairman. And tried to tell them that, look, legitimize my presence in the Sahel, because West Africa was already saying, you created a mess in Libya, this is the mess we are in, French get out. But just like US is being pushed out of Iraq. So he has convinced this, and they have even gone there because of the big power to say, now stay and give us even more arms.
Right, let's wind up with Professor Nomi Damba.
To Bal, there is one saving grace in all this mess and that is Russia is not going to compromise their relationship with Turkey. And there's an opportune time to bring those two together, because if Turkey gets involved in the way it is that is planning to do, it's going to be a huge mess, because Turkey is committed to saving this other team. You cannot rule out what the general and his team will do. So here's a point. The point is, Africa cannot just stand by and watch. Africa must be in the picture, must be in the middle of any resolution which is taking place. Libya is part of Africa.
Yes.
Africa is
It's a continent. Yeah. But you don't see Africa standing in front of the table. You see only two people, which is Turkey and Russia.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate.
That is my point.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Right, so of course also we are trying to see the spat that was there, so to speak, between Abiy and Donald Trump about the Nobel Peace Prize as well. In light of what is happening with the US and Iran, do you think this Nobel Peace Prize should have gone to Donald Trump, as he was really alluding to? He's saying, Abiy was saying that Donald Trump should take his complaint about being overlooked for the Nobel Peace Prize to the award organizers. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, of course, is the 2019 winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's just listen in to what he had to say, then, of course, we shall be winding up with this.
To be honest, I don't have any clue about the criteria, how the Nobel Committee select an individual for the prize. So the issue of President Trump must go to the Nobel Prize Committee. I'm not aware how
we just lost our audio there. Right, we'll try and replay it much later, but at least we get the gist of the story about this Nobel Peace Prize that Donald Trump was claiming he deserved actually to get this particular Nobel Peace Prize. Let's just begin with you, Dr. Khanenje. And looking at what is on the front page of the Newsweek, maybe my director Jackie may just pick up on it and try and relate that particular story and, of course, the Nobel Peace Prize going to Donald Trump.
Yeah, you know, for a man who has claimed to have unparalleled wisdom and everything else, I think he's shocked that the Nobel Peace Prize is not going to him, because he thinks everything he does is always the best. Now, I don't even understand how, in the wake of assassinating General Soleimani, actually that was going to happen. Now, of course, we expect that of Donald Trump. He was jealous and angry that Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, and doesn't understand why another man in Africa who almost looks to Barack Obama is getting a Nobel Peace Prize and not him. These black people are eating all the lunch, and it's not fair. But on a serious note, the assassination of the Iranian general was one of the biggest strategic blunders in the United States foreign policy in the last 50 years. It's inconsistent with actually what the U.S. has been practicing. Look, General Petraeus, General McChrystal, these people were very decorate, very respected. They had that problem. They still did not get rid of him. Now, a poll, at least based on the CNN reporting conducted late last year in Iran, showed that General Soleimani was the most popular person in Iran with 80% approval rating. In Iraq. Okay, this is not even Iran, in Iraq. Now, what people might not understand, the US has a massive and parallel air power that it has used in terms of targeting ISIS. But actually people who've been fighting on the ground, ISIS, have been militias trained and funded by this general. It is Iran that has been winning the war against ISIS in Iraq, on the ground, not exactly the United States. The United States have been using firepower to destroy important installations and stuff like that. But in terms of day-to-day fighting, it actually has been Iranians, especially ever since the Americans left, the troop withdrawal. And so doing such a thing at this stage, you expected, of course, Iran was going to respond. And if had the US retaliated again against Iran, things would really have gone bad. Now, I think one of the things that happened in Washington is Trump woke up and he was given apparently several options, and he chose the most extreme. But then he realized the public mood in the United States was not for the war, it's actually against that. In fact, it's interesting because where the Democrats were overwhelmingly against it, there is one leading candidate contender who is called Elizabeth Warren, who initially supported the killing, and her poll numbers went down terribly, and that's probably has cost her the presidential nomination. That is how bad it is. And therefore, this brought us very, very close to a catastrophe, if not a nuclear holocaust. I don't think the world should be allowed to go down this path, but given what is happening right now, I think the situation is calming down, and I think we should see a brighter future.
Great John Mearsheimer, writing right after the Cold War, had a book called Will We Soon Miss the Cold War? And I disagreed with his conclusions then, but I'm beginning to appreciate him now. Because we have a hegemon in the world. You know, a hegemon is a power that has got cultural, social, political, economic, and cultural power across the board. And they're acting unilaterally without any kind of access to things like the United Nations. Of course, everybody has noticed that the office of the United Nations Secretary General is probably redundant now, because before we used to have the public, in the International Public Opinion Court, where we would have debates about cartridges and what's going on. So that's completely out. So we're left with a world in which things can just move at dramatic speed and cause huge bedlam. One other little point before my colleagues take it. Iran is not, Iran is a very ideological country. And Debarl, you know, in 1945, just to give you a little bit of history, the Russians and the British installed a king, deposed a king, and installed his son. In the 50s, they overthrew Mossadegh, who was the prime minister. The CIA overthrew him. In the 70s, they had so much oil that Iran became awash with so much money that they actually had inflation. This inflation caused huge economic problems in Iran, and it caused the revolution. And I firmly believe that if the United States continues to prod that country, I think it's gonna, the Middle East will go to the dogs.
General, briefly, as you're winding up.
I'll say that this attack was uncalled for, and there was no emergency in the first place for this. Yet the president took his sole action to do this on his own, without even consulting Congress, which was uncalled for. And the consequences will have been really serious. I'm happy that the two parties have practiced restraint, and they are holding back, and we're able to talk and find a better solution to what is going on.
Right, thank you. Dr. Mustafa.
Debarl, because of the fractious and schismatic ideological nature of relations between Shia Sunnis in the Middle East, you find that Soleimani was loved and hated in equal measure. He was loved in Iran, but hated in other places. He was loved in Syria. He supported Bashar al-Assad, and in that, trained the militia that committed horrendous human rights abuses in Syria. And so there are some groups that are celebrating his demise, and others are celebrating his demise.
Thank you. Ambassador.
There's no question that since Trump became president, tensions, particularly in the hotspots, have gone up. And he walked out of the nuclear deal, which was also with partners. So the last person actually to get Nobel Prize is him. Because if anything, he should be really be condemned that because of him, we now have global tensions, and it's hurting us. This price that we have on the petrol pump is because of him.
All right, Noami Damba, briefly.
Debarl, the leadership in Iran are no angels. And what has happened, and what we need to watch very closely, is those of us that watch very, very close to what is happening in terms of mass destructive weapon power. Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a dress rehearsal. Push Iran further, they will produce nuclear weapon and actually use it. And therefore, we need to be really, really careful in terms of the role and what happened in the Middle East and the implication for the world. And Trump should not get anywhere near Nobel Prize.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have the audio back. We can just listen to it. Then we wind up the show. This is what Abi had said earlier about the Nobel Peace Prize that we were talking about. Did Trump really deserve it, as he claimed he does? Let's just listen to it.
I don't have any clue about the criteria, how the Nobel Committee select an individual for the prize. So the issue of President Trump must go to the Nobel Prize Committee. I'm not aware how they elect or select someone to provide the prize. And I'm not working for the prize. I'm working that peace is a very critical thing for our region. And if they recognize, and if President Trump complained, it must go to Oslo, not to Ethiopia. Thank you very much.
Right. Abi doesn't really care, Fig, how, you know, they go through the process of selecting the Nobel Peace Prize. There he goes there. I hope Donald Trump has heard what he had to say. Thank you very much for your valid carpet. I want to thank my panelists for that very engaging, a very also delectable discussion that we had regarding security matters around the world. You've been watching Standing on Guard, where we keep our eye on the enemy.
To NTV today. You are just in time. The live link will be done by Muledan, and sports has a lot to be shown. And Sean Cardovillis
keeping you up to date with all you need to know as and when it happens.
It's not been a very good morning in the country. We've had a very grisly accident.
In clear context to all the relevant issues.
Reacquire the property they've gotten with our looted money and save this country for my child and daughter Teko and the many children.
From our studios to the ground where the action is live.
Misuse of funds here in the country.
Someone donating their hat to Bernard Ojwang there.
Welcome to NTV today. You are just in time. The live link will be done by Muledan, and sports has a lot to be shown. And Sean Cardovillis
keeping you up to date with all you need to know as and when it happens.
It's not been a very good morning in the country. We've had a very grisly accident.
In clear context to all the relevant issues.
Reacquire the property.